You got all fancy on me, man.
We are hooked up.
Look at that. One less thing.
One less button I have to worry about clicking.
Yeah, one less thing I have to worry about screwing up when you can't do it.
It's set. All you have to do is hit record. It is set and ready to go. Husky, how are you, brother? What are
I'm
we
doing
on?
great, man. It's
Episode what? 58?
58,
You
58, man.
survived the storm.
I did. I lived. I lived.
You lived, but a lot didn't, and there's a lot it's gonna take a while to clean up.
Yeah,
Um,
really crazy week. I know last week I aired from South Carolina.
oh yeah,
Barely made it out, man.
the
Barely made
casting
it out.
couch. We all remember.
The casting couch.
Did you find
So
an actress?
no, no.
Oh.
I wasn't looking. But I did find a prepper. I did
I heard
find
that.
yeah, we brought somebody up for today. Guys, you're listening to The Crucible, by the way. I'm Emil.
I'm Pauly. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, we might be a week late, but I can tell you natural disasters are always going to happen. It doesn't have to be a hurricane, it can be anything, a simple power outage,
That's
right?
right. Mhm.
All right. Do the honor, my brother.
All right, I'm gonna bring up my buddy Sarge. If you guys are familiar with Sarge from Prepping with Sarge, we got him right here. Sarge, good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too. We have collaborated in the past. My first time collaborating with Pauly. How you doing today,
Pleasure to
Pauly?
meet you again. Like I said backstage, it is a pleasure, and I'm going to take as much of this in as I possibly can. Like our viewers out there listening, if they've never been to your channel or anything like that, all your information will be down below in the description. So definitely go check out. You have a slew, and that's being light of a
Yep.
word, I guess, of information on prepping. And I think what Husky and I wanted to do is basically just kind of touch on it, just beginning of it, I guess. But
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So you're a South Carolina resident, so you're a Carolinian.
I am a Carolinian. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on the coast, so we do get our share of hurricanes. But this one here, we had some tornado warnings. Woke up to that on what is this now? We're going. I guess what was it Thursday?
Yep.
Thursday?
Th-
Yeah,
Thursday when it
Thursday.
started. Yep.
Yeah,
Almost a
woke up
week, yeah.
Yeah, woke up to that, but other than that, we lost a little tree compared to what other people saw, especially like Tennessee and Western North Carolina, where we can't complain about a tree. But
Yeah.
we see our share of it, that's for sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned before we started, you had mentioned that you had close friends that were in the affected area. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, our best friends live very close to Asheville. My wife and I are actually the godparents for one of their children, and last time we heard from them was right before the storm. And of course, everybody knew it was probably going to hit that area, but this has never happened like this before for like Asheville. Like they get the remnants of what's left over after a hurricane blows through. Nothing like what we've seen this time.
Right.
And so I don't think anybody like worried too much about it. Then no comms, no nothing. They weren't responding to text. They weren't responding to messenger. They weren't responding to calls. We were very close with their families, so we got in touch with his parents, and they said the same thing. We're not hearing anything. We're getting really worried. Several days go by, and we kept thinking, surely we'll hear from them tonight. Surely we'll hear from them tonight, right? And then finally on Monday, they finally checked in that they were okay, their house was okay, and they were evacuating their area. But yeah, it was bad because cell phone towers got wiped out, and I think that's maybe one thing we should probably hit on tonight is comms. Like what we think we can rely on, probably we need to be rethinking that. Usually they say if your phone's not working, try texting them or try, Messenger or something like that.
Yeah.
All of it was down. All of it was down.
So I'm going to share a little anecdotal story before I start going into the questions for you. So the weekend before this hurricane, my wife and I, we traveled out to eastern Tennessee. It's right across the border from Boone. Is an area called Roan Mountain. That's where my wife's mom and stepfather live. And they live on the top of a mountain. All around them is a 360 view of the valleys around them. And they are on solar. They have water catchment systems with filtration. They have satellite Starlink internet. They've got septic systems. So they're off the grid. They even have livestock and all that. Completely unharmed by the storm. The storm came, it blew through, and because they were on top of the mountain, thankfully they were safe. But
Sure.
anywhere they look down below, I mean, they're basically on an island right now. All the roads are wiped out. They can't really get in and out, but they could call us, they can communicate with us and tell us that they were doing okay. They've got everything they need, no issues, no real damage where they lived. Everything was down below wherever the rivers were, wherever the creeks were, that's where all the mudslides happened. So that's just a little anecdotal story. Thankfully, they're all right. But Sarge, hindsight is always 2020.
Yeah.
People who, everyday people who had no idea that this was going to be as bad as it really was, probably could have prepared better. What are some of the most basic preps that you feel would have benefited in helping maybe even save lives in this issue?
Well, the number one thing to keep in mind, I would say, is you've got to have a way to purify water. You got to have a way to store water. Actually, in the United States, that for the most part, I mean, I know there's areas of the country where this is a struggle, but for the most part, we have clean drinking water in the United States, and that's not true all around the world. In fact, unclean drinking water is the number one killer in the world. It's the biggest thing that takes lives. So we take for granted that that's there, that you can run your tap water and grab some H2O and it's going to be safe. But when a storm happens, your city or your county's filtration system can get really jacked up, could get shut off. That does happen. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong with it. So if you don't have drinking water, you're going to be screwed pretty fast. So that's the number one thing, that regardless of what scenario you're thinking about, I would say that's always got to be your first prep, is a way to purify water and a way to store water. There are things that we can't predict, right? Like we were talking about, that this area of North Carolina doesn't typically get storms like this, and you have entire towns now that are under mud. That's kind of hard to predict. I could have here among coastal South Carolina, we could have a tsunami in the middle of the night, and bye Sarge. You just won't see me anymore because I'm pretty close to the ocean. If it's a large tsunami, you just probably won't ever see me on the air anymore. So there's some stuff that's hard to prepare for, unless you want to like try to find some place where there's no natural disasters, and good luck, right? Seems like everywhere's got something. But I'd say water, and then food. Food would be the next one. You need to have some stored dry goods, stuff that's going to last for a long time. You want to get in the habit of rotating it, right? But certain things we know last on the shelf for a long time. Your canned goods, your pasta, your rice, your beans, things like that. And as long as you that's part of your regular meals, you can get in the habit of rotating it by a little bit at a time to kind of get yourself started. You get those two things covered, you're probably better off than 90% of the country, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then the next thing, people always say, well, what's after those two? It's going to start depending on your situation, right? I would say if you take medications, you need to start thinking about, how do I stockpile some medications, right? And I can get into a little bit more on that if you want. First aid kits, because think about with this storm, right? If you're wildfires are going on or whatever, you might not be able to get an ambulance to you. You might be having to tough it out at home. If you get injured, tree falls on your property or something like that, you might have to tough it out and use your first aid stuff until it's safe to get to higher level care, right? So you need to take some first aid classes and get a good kit and know how to use that stuff, and self-defense, right? Like the mainstream media is not going to talk about this too much, but if you follow more independent media sources, there's looting going on right now in a lot of these areas, because there's some bad people in the world who like to take advantage of situations, and they know that there's a lot of these neighborhoods are now abandoned, and they're going in there and they're robbing people blind, right? So these neighborhoods can get kind of dangerous after a storm, so you got to think about your self-defense. And then once you get all your basics covered, then you start getting into the financial preparedness stuff, where you got to have some emergency cash. And the three of us are all fans of silver and gold, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
Yeah, to me, that's part of prepping too, and we can get into a discussion of why I think it is. But those would be your top 5 is water, food, medicine, first aid, self-defense, and then financial preparedness.
Now, for self-defense, I did hear about reports of shots being fired at night, and this is typically the case where people are protecting their property from looters. When you're talking about financial preparedness, the having cash on hand, are there places that are only accepting cash over there right now?
That's what I'm hearing is
That's a good
that there,
question.
yeah, that there are, and I've seen that here too. If there's a power outage, some stores, not all, some stores will stay open and they'll accept cash.
Mm,
So it's a good idea to have some on hand, right? Each family has to decide how much makes sense for that. Maybe not $10,000 in cash in your house, but maybe somewhere between. For me, I would say the good rule of thumb would be how much cash would you need to get a hotel for 3 days in your area?
mm,
Like not
Hmm.
not necessarily like the Ritz, but like something safe, right? Not somewhere where there's like illegal activities going on, but somewhere safe for three
yeah,
days. If you that would be the minimum amount of cash that I would recommend for people to have on hand.
that's smart. Now, sorry, go ahead, Paul. You
No,
first.
I was just going to touch on, okay, you talked about the food and the water. To go along with that, if you're out of power, you're going to want to have a source to heat said food and cook, boil the water, right? So simple fire starters can be stored very, very easily in different places around your house, dry bags, what have you. But it's definitely something you should think about and consider having, right?
Yeah, and there's all kinds of options, right? Like if you've got a fire pit, that's obviously one way you could do things. Most people, if you're own a home, you probably got a barbecue. If you're an apartment, maybe with a balcony, maybe you could get by with a camping stove or something like that. Even like those little camp stoves,
Little
like
camp
when you're,
stoves, yep.
yeah, when you're
Those little
solo
green
hiking.
propane tanks.
Yeah, like jet boil, things like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Those are an option. But also, like, it's a good idea to store some of your food. Should be stuff that you don't have to even do any cooking or preparedness with. Like you just crack open a can, you can eat those peaches or spaghettios or whatever, and you're not
Yeah.
going to die. It's
Yeah.
it's
Right.
still going to taste okay. Yeah,
It's not the way you might like it, but it is
right.
what it is. Emil and I touched on a while back, um, for I guess I would say longer situation, especially living in, let's just say, an urban area where I mean there's like where I live's country living. Like it's I don't live house to house to house to house to house, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes those people aren't prepared, and you almost, if it's going to be a while, whether or not you get along with your neighbors and how they are, but you almost have to look the part as well. Like you don't have a bunch of rations and you can't be walking around with that big belly sticking out because you just filled yourself.
Yeah.
That's like a long-term thing, but it makes complete sense. He sent me a link and I forget what it was from, either Instagram or TikTok, but that woman was speaking. um they actually had some great big community bonfire where people would come and cook their food and boil water, just on this recent hurricane.
Mm,
And actually, like that gray man kind of mentality where we talk about gray man, where you want to try to blend in and not stand out. You don't want to
Hmm.
be the person that's necessarily like, hey, I got tons of food here.
Yeah,
Sorry,
living high.
suckers.
Yeah.
you know. If you're in a position, I'm going to also say, if you're in a position to help people, then do what you
You
can, right?
should. Yeah, right.
Especially your neighbors, like, because they're going to watch your back too. Like if you're taking care of your neighbors, they're also going to be hopefully looking out for you too. So
exactly.
that can pay dividends. So don't be like that miser that's you know not, but you also are probably not going to be able to help everybody in your city, right? Like there's going to be a
Yeah.
limit. So but it's not necessarily even long term, like that need to be kind of gray man. On one of the prepper groups this week, this woman who was in one of these areas was posting, and she said she's been running her generator and she's having strangers come up to her property and offering her 3 times the cash value to buy the generator. Now that might sound cool. Hey, opportunity! I buy some extra
Hmm.
generators and sell them, right? You don't want strangers coming up because they know you have a resource.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
a
Right.
problem because now you're a target. And if you don't sell them that generator, maybe they're going to come back that night and try to take it from you.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
That's
it can be a little scary.
desperation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
desperation is it creates some scary situations for sure.
Yeah. That'll shift things from civility to chaos,
Yeah.
anarchy, real quick.
Yeah. Very
And
quick.
I hear that there are these sections of North Carolina that are still completely cut off, no food, no water, and it is chaos there. Like there's like bodies. There's all kinds of stuff going on there, and no food, no water. We were just talking before we got on. Actually, a huge YouTuber, a crazy Russian hacker, lives out
Yeah.
that way, and he did put a post out. I don't know how he got it to send, but he said no power, no communication, no food, no water. Pray for us, But he's alive. But it's like it's not discriminating any person based on their finances or socioeconomic class. If you're in the area, you're hit.
Yep.
So, Sarge, when the whole thing first kicked off, let's say if you did live in Asheville, what would be the deciding factor on whether or not to bug out or to hunker down?
Yeah, it's hard. We haven't gone through several hurricanes here. We did bug out on one of them. It was one of our first ones, and we regretted it. We regretted that we had bugged out on that, and we've not bugged out since. That being said, we also haven't had a category 4. We haven't had like
Right.
a Katrina since then. I don't know that I would stay here as close as I am to the ocean if we're looking at something like that. So you have to look at what the reports are saying. You have to listen to, I would say, your local weather experts. Your local ones are for us, those are our best source. The Weather Channel, frequently, I love the Weather Channel. I watch it all the time, but they don't understand our waters. They don't understand our currents. They don't understand the wind patterns in here. And so they give you a forecast that's kind of a generalized forecast, but they're frequently wrong for us. Right. And again, I'm not knocking on the Weather Channel. I'm just saying that's our experience here. I love the Weather Channel, but our local experts are who we go to for storms because they know our waters. They've been doing it for a long time. Our favorite weatherman was here during Hurricane Hugo in 1989. Okay. So that's our source. So we're going to listen to him. And then as we're getting closer, we generally are preparing for both, my wife and I. And so we're thinking about both scenarios. Like, we're going to keep watching this because you don't know until like 48 hours out, until like where it's going to land, where the eye is going to be.
Right.
And so we're talking about it. We're preparing for both scenarios, if we're bugging in or bugging out. And then when we get down to like, okay, for us, it's do or die time, we make a decision together. If we can't come to a consensus, then we get to the place where one person says, I can't make the decision, you make it. And then the other person makes the decision. So
yeah,
it's worked out good for us. But I feel Mrs. Sarge and I are generally on the same page on a lot of stuff. So if you've got one family member who says, I don't want to leave, and the other family member says, I do want to leave, I think you're going to have some interesting family discussions going on. Maybe have those in advance, maybe think about those well before you have to make those decisions.
Yeah. And I'd agree, because I know when it comes to bugging out, when we lived in Florida, we did bug out for 2 of the hurricanes, I think. Really bad ones too. And the common factor is the longer you wait, the worse the roads are. So if you have the slightest idea that, hey, we're going to leave, you need to leave right then. You wait too long, you're going to find lines of cars, no gas in the gas stations. Everybody's, the roads coming in are easy, especially in Florida. You notice like the southbound roads are always clear. You'll see the line workers with their big trucks. They're always coming in. Everybody else is trying to get out, and there's only one way, 95, and that's it.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. We monitor that as well, like what the outbound traffic looks like, so that we know like how is we have to make our decision now, right? Like what we found that time that we evacuated is we were able to wait till almost the last minute and get out, because most of the city had already evacuated before us. But I certainly can't tell people to count on that. There's been many folks who've got stuck in gridlock, run out of gas, and now you're riding out a hurricane in your car on the highway with your family. And that's not going to be a good time, because your kids are going to be screaming, and they're going to say, I need to go potty. Your wife is going to be mad at you.
Oh yeah.
You're going to regret that. So definitely be looking at like what are the patterns, and like take that into consideration. Get your fuel way before it's time to go, because that runs fast. That's the other thing. If you lived in Florida, you saw that, right? That when they say there's a storm coming, get your fuel now.
Oh yeah.
Because you delay and you're going to be out of luck. The gas stations do run out of gas.
Oh yeah. for
Do you,
sure.
do you think like you talked about you and your wife, do you think stubbornness is a major role in people getting trapped? They just think that no matter what they hear, no matter what they say, they're staying home and it's not going to be as bad as it is,
It's
or as
hard to
bad as
leave.
they're saying.
Yeah, it's hard to leave because you know that when you leave, there's going to be looters floating around.
Hmm.
So that's a factor. Everybody's always more comfortable in their home. If you've got small children or you've got pets, you've got some hard decisions to make there, right? Like obviously, we're never abandoning our pets, but I don't have. I used to have horses and chickens. You can't exactly throw your horses and chickens in the back
Yeah,
of your
right.
car and show up at a hotel. It's not going to work.
No, no.
I've tried
So yeah,
Guys,
that.
so there's hard decisions that people have to make, and it's hard to leave, and I get that. And then sometimes you got somebody who's ill, or they've got ambulatory issues. We've got a couple elderly people here in our neighborhood that they pretty much they're not going to be able to evacuate, and they've said that they accept their fate one way or the other. They're not going.
yikes.
Yeah.
So this storm isn't the only thing going
Right.
on right now. Actually, I just heard there's a massive solar flare, could wipe out communications for a few days. And there's this, I guess, more ever present is this strike, right?
Yeah,
This,
I
yeah,
was just I wanted to mention that as well. A huge thing from
yeah,
all the way down the coast.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sarge, what are the implications and what should people be thinking about?
Okay. So there's what to worry about, what's realistic, and what what
Worst case scenario.
we hope for, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
is we're already seeing in my area there's a very big toilet paper shortage. There's a bottled water shortage, and there is shortages starting to develop on a couple other things.
Wine,
Now,
you said, right?
yeah, there's a lot of people buying a lot of alcohol right
Why?
now.
Oh, buying alcohol. Yeah. Well,
You're good.
Um, so
they can have my share.
yeah, I've already got my bourbon collection put aside for that. And I'm not a big drinker anyways, so I
Yeah, me
probably
either.
have enough to last me a very long time. But I like collecting old bottles and stuff like that, so I've got a pretty decent collection. But the toilet paper thing is weird because we produce most toilet paper in North America, so in theory it shouldn't be too heavily influenced by this strike on the ports. But people have panicked, and it's partly also due to what's happening with the storm recovery. People are buying up pallets of toilet paper and sending it to these areas to help with recovery.
Mhm.
So it's partly driven by that too. But people are going into panic mode probably because of what happened in 2020, and they're thinking, "Oh no, that's not
Yeah.
happening to me again."
Yeah, right. Oh, Lord.
So yeah, we're having a toilet paper issue right now. Now I hope it doesn't go on very long, but that you what's going to really, if this strike goes on for a long time, which I pray it doesn't, but then anything that's coming into the country from the East Coast is going to be hard to get and delayed. And when you can get it, it's going to be more expensive. Probably a lot more expensive.
More
So
expensive and probably too late by then.
yeah, so you have to think about like anything that's coming in from Europe, and from the west coast of Africa.
South
Um,
America, things
some
through
stuff on
Miami.
South America, yep, that's coming up on
Yeah.
the eastern side, yep.
Mhm.
And so I would say coffee would be one that I would say people should be watching for. Chocolate. Um, they they said bananas.
Not
I
Halloween.
did
Don't
hear
get
that.
Halloween.
Yeah, yeah. So some automobile parts and things like that, which
Yeah.
is unfortunately going to cause some problems for. So ironically, I don't want to get too political on you guys here, but ironically, the union is, if this goes on for a very long time, is going to screw over the auto workers union and the construction workers unions because they
Yep.
won't be able to get what they need,
Steel workers.
and so it's going to put other people out of work.
Hmm.
I pray this doesn't go on for a long time. Let's just hope they get a contract resolved, and because the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to be for the entire economy. Then it starts having this like trickle effect on everything.
It
Crazy.
certainly does. Yeah, it's gonna. It already has, and it's gonna continue. And like you said, I hope that they can come to an agreement, and that's the only thing we can really hope for. Is it's just a fast, speedy thing. The way I look at it, I could see all of 2 weeks, but who knows? If they're working on it every day, every night, we'll
I
see
hope
what
so.
happens.
Yeah. 2 weeks or less, we probably would be okay. It probably won't be too bad. Just a little bit of grumbling and groaning that like,
And just
get my
to touch
chocolate.
on it quick, I've been a union worker as long as since I turned 18 years old, and number one, not that it's a good thing, but for them it is a good thing. The time they chose to strike, you couldn't have picked a better time to strike, even though it's going to damage this economy and people's with this hurricane. It's a terrible thing. So hopefully that helps move their process along. But what they're looking at, as far as me being a union employee, a 6
Did we
year.
lose them?
Who'd we lose?
Nope.
No, there you
I
go.
lost you.
No.
There you-
Oh, a 6-year contract for a union worker is a very long contract. That's a long thing to be tied up in. And when you see numbers like 50%, when you stretch that over 6 years in the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot of money if you're used to getting something every 3 years, and now you're stretching it over 6. So I can see where they're butting heads and going back and forth, being part of something like that, and been on strikes myself. So hopefully they can just get it solved, get the guys back to work, get the gals back to work, and keep business rolling.
And then everybody wins. That's the best case scenario.
Except the companies that think they'll lose.
A little bit the shareholders.
They're going to pass that on to us consumers,
Sure.
So, yeah.
Sure.
Of course. So, Sarge, we brushed on communications, talk about solar flares, talking about stuff in the North Carolina area, what happened. What's your take on, like, should we buy smoke signals and flares and things like that? What's going on? What should work?
So I haven't played around with this yet. My wife actually sent me, she found this. There's apparently, if you have an iPhone, there's a way to turn it into like
satellite, right?
Sat signals. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not dug into that yet. So maybe, and I don't know that I'm going to have time, honestly, in the next 6 weeks to do. So maybe if there's a prepper out there that's listening to this that has does some content creation, maybe you can put that out there for the community. I think it would be a great thing to do for the community. Well, walkie-talkies are going to get you a little bit of range if you've got line of sight. That's the key there. Ham radio, if you've got line of sight or you can bounce the signal, you can get a little bit of pretty good range with that. CB, maybe. I'm actually thinking about adding a CB into my vehicle. I've been thinking about it for a while, and this kind of just like, it'd be nice to have another option for communications.
And those can go for quite a while, as far as range goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to go as far as a ham, but yeah.
No, right.
You
but
might
it's
be
an
able to reach
option.
out and tell somebody, hey, I'm stranded here. Can somebody just notify my family or notify, first responders or whatever, so that when they have time, they can get to me or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you and I Emil had talked about, you can edit that out.
What? No, you're good.
Okay. You use your name?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. You and I had talked about beforehand of Starlink, right? That maybe satellite and stuff like that. That maybe this is more people will start thinking about this, especially if you're living in like a rural community. It might be a good option to consider.
I've seen it once. Come over top of
satellite array
flying through the sky. Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy to see.
It's nuts.
Yeah, I saw some statistics saying that Elon now owns two-thirds, either 1/3 or 2/3 of the satellites in the atmosphere right now.
Isn't there a Tesla floating around out there somewhere?
Yes, it's a mini one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So we covered just about everything. I think there's 2 more quick ones that I want to hit on. Maybe I'll just throw them both out there, and then you can kind of pick and choose what you want to talk about. So we're talking about all of the potential mishaps that could happen. Right now in the news, you got kind of 2 more. One of them being fallout from the election in one direction or another. Bad things could happen depending on how politically charged people get. And then the other thing being the whole drama in the Middle East. We're on the fever pitch, that boiling point of whatever's going on between Iran, Israel, you got Russia, you got Ukraine. It's a little bit of, BRICS versus NATO without it actually being overtly BRICS versus NATO. That's all on the other side of the world. obviously the potential civil war stuff is here. Even to say that out loud is crazy. But
Crazy, yeah.
worst case scenario, or not even worst case, what should people do anyways, just to be prepared for that stuff?
So those are the two things that I've got my eye on right now. The most is not necessarily civil war. I don't think we're there yet. I know many people in the preparedness community would probably disagree with me. I don't think we're there yet. I think we are probably looking at civil unrest though.
Mm.
After maybe even leading up to the election, we're getting close now, and then probably afterwards. And I think it doesn't, from preparedness standpoint, it doesn't matter which side wins. I think the other side's gonna raise a ruckus about it. So let's talk about that one first, and then if we have time, I don't mind hitting on the bigger situation too.
Cool.
I think that if you were prone to any of that kind of stuff in 2020, you should probably be thinking really hard about what is my plan now, because it's probably going to hit your city again. Okay. Could this roll out further out into like rural areas and suburbs? Sure. I don't think it will. I think it's predominantly going to be like in your traditional cities like
Major
Baltimore,
cities.
Washington,
Detroit.
D.C., Atlanta, Detroit, L.A., maybe a little bit in New York and Boston. But Baltimore, Atlanta, and D.C. for sure. L.A. probably. Like you should know by now. Like those are the hot spots. That's where things are going to kick off. They're going to start there usually. And what I say frequently on my channel is I don't whatever side you're on, I really don't care. Just don't protest in the street. It's a dumb way to die.
Right.
Don't do
Sure.
that. It's your life means more than that. You if you want to protest, I absolutely support your right to protest. Either whoever you're voting for or whatever your issue is, that I 100% support your right to free speech and free assembly. And I think that those are important ideals, regardless of whether or not I agree with your position. But don't protest in the street. You're putting yourself at a huge risk, and it's a dumb way to die. It's a really dumb way to die. But
Yep.
let's talk about the average homeowner, right? Like, or business owner or whatever. If you were in one of these areas that were affected, like one of these neighborhoods, it's probably going to be affected again. So you might be starting to think about do I want to hire a personal security to watch my store at nighttime, right? Do I have the right amount of insurance on it? Should I call my insurance company and ask them, are they going to cover looting, right?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I don't own a storefront. That's a question for you if you own a storefront. If you're in a neighborhood that's prone to this, then I would be starting to talk to your neighbors about like, hey, what happens if people start coming through here with torches, right? What are we going to do? Are we going to, and first responders can't get to us, or they choose to not to get to us, right? Sometimes they're on an order to stand down,
Sure.
right? So, what are you going to do then for your neighborhood? Are you going to have comms going? Are you going to have neighborhood security, or how much level of force are you willing to take into and under what conditions? I don't want anybody to become vigilantes, but I also support your right to defend yourself if you're at imminent risk of being beat to death.
Right.
Yeah, you got a right to defend yourself. So I think those are the conversations people should be having. How are you going to communicate? Are you going to use walkie-talkies or biofangs, or just texting each other? Who's going to stay up if there's riots, right? Like, are you going to take shifts, staying up? Those are all things that everybody can do with your neighbors. And if you're in a storefront, I would be thinking about checking your insurance. And do you want to start having a conversation with a personal security firm are they available, like around the time of the election? Because they're probably going to start getting booked.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, no doubt.
And you don't have to go with like, heavy duty Blackwater, contractors or whatever, but you probably need somebody that's certified in your state, that's, allowed, licensed to carry for private security, and that kind of thing would be the way to go, because just that presence alone was a deterrent in some of these previous riots, right?
Okay.
Where, these rioters would come up on a neighborhood and they say, oh, this store's got private security and they're armed and they're paying attention. Let's just move on to the next place.
No doubt.
Yep.
Very good. And so Middle East.
Oh,
there?
So that's I think we're dangerously close to you said it, like a NATO versus BRICS kind of situation. A couple things that I would be watching for would be if China gets involved, and if China does any kind of direct attack on Taiwan, it's on. It's on. Then, like, you might as well say, okay, we're now in World War III at that point. If Russia makes an aggressive move towards a NATO ally, and they've come dangerously close, and there's ways that could play out. They could say it was accidental, and then we
Which I
see
think
how.
they've done that before with
Yeah,
Poland, right? And they hit Poland.
We'll see if that flies with NATO, because any NATO member can invoke Article 5, which means we're all in it now. It's World War III. We're all in it. So we're dangerously close. I hope not. Right? Like, I'm getting too old where I'm not going to be too useful. If I get drafted, they'll probably be like, we got to fill this guy. He can't even, do 30 push-ups or whatever. Right? Like, but I work. Yeah, he's going to go have to slop full of trains. But I worry about my nephews and nieces. Like, I don't want to see
100%.
Yeah. I don't want to see any attacks on American interests. I don't want to see attacks on our allies' interests.
Right.
I think there's a way for the Russia-Ukraine situation to de-escalate. I'm not, foreign affairs expert, and they're not going to call in old Sarge to be a negotiator, but I think Russia ultimately is going to need to have a piece of the port in Crimea carved out for them, and that's just their financial future. Like, that's a must-have for them. So there, in my mind, if we somehow can negotiate that for them, maybe there's a chance that this whole thing can start to de-escalate. As far as the Middle East, that's a really complicated thing. And Husky, you probably know more about that area than I can even guess at. You served overseas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
It's so
I don't even try, because both sides are right and both sides are wrong. So
sure.
I can't even hold an argument in my own head over which side is more right, because this kind of this drama has been going on for generations, too many generations to count, where whoever started it doesn't even matter at this point. It's so
factionalized, right? Like, it's yeah.
And what you're dealing with really is human life. Whether you want to call one side more human or more humanitarian than the other one, I don't even know if you can call that right now. It's just both sides are a mess. Both sides have their wants, their list of demands, and neither are really getting what they want. So I couldn't even tell you how to begin fixing that.
Yeah. I would say the only thing I can add to that is that Iran launching those missiles this week escalates it to a very concerning level.
For sure.
They've used proxies up to this point, with being Hezbollah. And for people who are listening and don't know, like, proxy warfare is like when you're using a smaller group to act out your intentions, right? And so that the nation itself. So the United States does this, by the way. If people don't know, we will engage in proxy warfare, and we'll have another country fight another country, and we're supporting it and we're funding it, but we're not
some F-16s and
we're not directly involved, but we're kind of funding it. That's a proxy war. And them directly getting involved is a concern, because I don't know if they are a nuclear power or they're very close to being a nuclear power.
I know they're close. I don't think they're official yet. I saw some report saying that within the next few weeks they could be. Yeah, they're close.
And even without that, they're not, they're a very sophisticated military that's been building up for a long time. They're no push in the park. Nobody's going to just walk over them. It would be a very, very ugly war.
And I think they've applied for BRICS membership, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah, it should be, let's see, Brazil, Russia,
India, China, South Africa. And then there's also, I believe, Saudi has applied, Ethiopia, some other countries. Some of them are not as relevant, but some of them are actually, big players in the Middle East.
So the U.S. dollar has had a good run, right? Like, we've benefited from the petrodollar alliance, and the United States has lived very happy and fat from that. And there's a lot of people who are ready to see that come to an end. There's a lot of And if you step outside your box for a minute, you can understand that to some extent, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is unfair, I get that. I can see that from other people's perspective.
Yeah.
Let
It's
me
sometimes, sorry, go ahead.
You go first, and then I got a question for you guys.
Okay, I was gonna say it's sometimes hard to step out as an American who's lived here our entire lives, to step out of that and from a 30,000 foot view down, being able to see that we do run the playground,
Right.
and if people don't play the way we want to play, we sanction them. It's
Right.
like it's really easy. We'll go to war with you, whether it's
Right.
monetary or physically go to war with you. We'll make you play our game.
Yeah.
It's tough for everyone else.
Yeah, we'll fund a little bit of a insurrection in your country. Like, there's all kinds of things that
You're talking
happen.
CIA level stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And going outside the box, I try and explain this to folks that I work with because, for 6, 7 years now, being sober and being in the stacking community, I've tried to lead them to say, hey, you guys should own a little bit of this stuff, whether it's silver, whether it's gold, doesn't matter if it's 90%, whatever it is, you should probably own some. And 90% of them, it always comes down to, well, you can't eat the silver, you can't eat the gold. No, you can't.
Right.
But you can use it to do different things if it was ever to come to that.
Right. So
It's
that
so
was my
tough to
question.
get to break people of that,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a couple barriers. Husky, you and I were like actually talking, I think, on Instagram about this, right? And then I think it was you that I was talking with, and you said the financial barrier is probably a big hurdle for people, and so they say, well, if I can't get this, I'm just going to trash all over it, right?
Yeah,
Was that
yeah.
you that I was talking about it? Okay.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. So there's a couple things here. And that was my question I was going to ask you guys is like, when you think about like World War III type scenarios, where does silver and gold come into this? My thoughts on this, I've talked about this on my channel before, is that gold and silver are part of my preps. And the reason for that is gold and silver are the most stable currency that has ever existed on this planet. Ever. It's existed for more than 2,000 years. It's survived wars. It's survived the breakdown of civilizations. It's been used to bribe your way out of a war zone. It's been used to get goods that you couldn't get otherwise. And why? Because you can take gold into your backyard and you can melt it down, and it is completely anonymous and nobody will know where you got it from. And then you can take that little nugget of gold or that round of gold that you've made, and you can take it anywhere in the world and you can sell it to a jeweler or a coin store anywhere in the world, and they're going to give you local currency. Right? So it is the most stable and anonymous and easily
and that's those are facts.
currency.
This isn't just somebody's opinion. That's facts that
Right.
you're saying there. This is 100% real. It's happening today as it did
It's happening right now.
2,000 years ago.
People are using gold to get out of these war zones right now.
For sure. For sure.
People are bribing senators, right? For US
Yeah.
income, right? With gold. Why?
Gold
Because
bars,
it's
gold
anonymous.
kilos.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting thing when John and I started a metals business, right? It was metal merchant at the time. I had to fill out AMLA paperwork, Anti-Money Laundering Act. And the reason is because so many illicit or illegal businesses use gold and silver as a means of payment because it's not traceable. So yeah, that's if the drug dealers use it,
And that's
then
what
clearly there's a
Bond
benefit.
Man Evan talked about when we had him on here.
That's right. Yeah.
And I was telling Husky before we went live that I got it from some intel that I spoke to, that some of these stores in these storm zones are actually accepting US dollars, the ones that were able to reopen, US dollars and gold and silver. And those are no credit card, no Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I'm not like dogging on cryptocurrency. I own a little bit of cryptocurrency too, but like when it comes down
to
access
it,
you wouldn't be able to.
What we're going to say with all the internet towers down and all that good stuff. What are you going to do?
Yeah, but nothing beats something that you hold in your hand. That, and in some cases, the gold that you guys own and the gold that I own, that's the same gold from 2,000 years ago. It's been melted down again and again and again and transferred from person to person and person. It's the ultimate form of currency for many, many reasons. So just say, oh, you can't eat gold and silver. Well, I can't
I
eat my
know.
flashlights.
No.
Yeah.
I
Right.
can't eat my knives. I can't eat my guns. I can't eat,
Exactly. And it's well, I would rather buy bullets to do okay, well, you can't eat those either. Well, I mean, what are
Mm.
you gonna do with them?
yeah.
You buy
Except
100,000 bullets. You're not going to shoot them all. You'll be dead
that's
before.
just it. And some of them are that way. I'm like, dude, where are you gonna store all that stuff if you got to get on the move? Like, I think you went a little bit
Right.
overboard
Kind
here.
of heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
be heavy. Look at
Yeah.
this, I have a baggie full of gold in my pocket, few $1,000s right here.
You could technically swallow it,
Sure,
for gold,
sure.
you in small tenth fraction, 1/10 fractional ounces.
Yeah. Don't go
You could,
2 ounce.
yeah, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be a rough time.
Yeah. Have
Oh.
a bad night.
Yeah, it's gonna be a bad night. But if I had to, I could swallow a couple of those and cross a border or something, And I'm not encouraging people to do illicit things, but
Yeah, right,
um,
right.
there's a
Go to the
reason
old
why.
prison pocket.
Yeah, or the prison pocket. Yeah, and people have in World War II. People
Of
did, right?
course,
Like
of
that's where they hid
course.
stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it's I get it if people like I can't afford it, right? I get it, And I would say then think about starting with silver,
Mhm,
or if you're gonna go with gold, think about fractional gold, right? So even though gold
exactly.
has like skyrocketed in price, you can get a 10th ounce of gold for what, like 300 ish,
Yeah. Yeah.
around
They're running
300.
about 300 right now.
Yep,
Yeah, so
yep.
most people could save up for that, right? It might take you if you're in a rough situation, it might take you a while, but eventually you could get $300,
Right.
you know. So start,
Especially if you are just saving cash. It's not gonna hurt to take some of that cash you've been saving and put it into metals. That way it's there, you don't even have to worry about it. It's just there.
yeah,
Let me give a little caveat to that. This is from my own learnings, right? From my own lessons. Um, if you're going to be buying silver, especially, buy something that's highly recognized,
Yep,
I agree.
yep.
very low premium, and preferably not gigantic.
Yeah.
This is a dumb buy during a disaster because
And not
it's
from that TikTok video you saw of me.
yeah. No, no,
Did
no,
somebody
not from
use
that.
your information without your permission?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
a total scam. Like we played it, was it last episode or 2
Yeah.
episodes ago? We played it and you click a link and it takes you to some buy 10 American Silver Eagles for
Get 10
$100.
free. Yeah.
Yeah, buy 10, get 10. And I could never find it. So people that sent it to me, they did report it, but
Yeah.
that stuff is going on every single day and it's just going to continue to get worse, worse, and worse.
Somebody did something similar, and Pirate Stacker actually found it. He sent me this. It was a link on Facebook. It was a guy using my image, and he was basically scamming people like, "Hey, I'm selling my
Mhm.
silver and gold," and people know my name and image, and so they were like, "Oh, Sarge, he's a trustworthy guy," and
Mhm.
Pirate sent it to me. I'm like, "Man, people are getting pissed. Is this you?" And I'm like,
Whoops.
no,"
Yeah, right.
and I can't control that. It wasn't me. I can tell you that. And I reported it as soon as I did. And Facebook took it down once it started. I also posted on Instagram and I said, anybody who
Yep.
sees this, please report this. And then eventually it did get taken down, but some people lost money, so
Yeah.
be careful. Be careful. There's such thing as reputable dealers and not reputable people.
Exactly.
You
And the
said,
funny thing about that is when we were talking about it before we did the show is it was brought to my attention by my own brother. He called me and he was asking me about the video. He says, "So what's up with these things?" I clicked the link and it takes me to the site and it's 10 of these I said, "Dude, don't do it.
Don't go
Don't
there's
there.
do
no
it. Thanks for
way.
calling. Back away.
Yeah.
Back away."
So if you were going silver and specifically from a prepper mindset, right, not a collector, right, what would you guys recommend?
Paul?
I you can't go wrong with generic buffaloes. They're well known. They're not a coin. They're a generic. They're still a lower quote unquote premium than your bullion, which would be if you were going to buy that, your bullion coins, American Eagle, I would stick with, or the Canadian Maple Leaf, even the Britannias. But if it was me and I was going to recommend something to somebody, I would hit any of those bullion dealers, look for their 10 rounds at spot to start with. Every one of them has it that's available, I'm sure, but definitely the Buffalo. I mean, it's just an iconic coin in general, but those are just silver rounds.
So I might actually argue that. I like the buffaloes, and I think
Mhm.
that that's, especially if you're buying them from a reputable dealer.
Yeah.
But in a, let's say, post hurricane situation or post war zone situation, whatever, if I didn't know you and you came at me with buffaloes, I might not be inclined to buy those because I don't really have a way to test them, and I know that buffaloes are highly counterfeited.
Okay.
So I might actually argue in the case for constitutional, especially
Ah,
the old worn down stuff, because no one's copying that, and you can tell, you can feel it, you can sense that that's real silver.
Okay.
So I would actually almost rather go with those. I would say constitutional.
Okay.
Quarters are
And
usually the cheapest.
I
yep.
think
Yep.
I think both of those are a good option. For me, when I'm stacking as a prepper, the four silver coins that I lean the most into is American Eagles, and I don't personally, and this is not
You kind
necessarily
of
the same strategy as what you guys. Personally, I don't mind paying a little bit extra premium
ah,
for the reliability of like an eagle versus a
correct.
Sure.
buffalo. Okay, American Eagles, Maple Leafs, Philharmonics, and the Britannias.
Yeah,
Right,
Brits are good
all American allies. All four coins should be recognized anywhere that an American would expect to safely travel. Okay, and all are going to come in a denomination that's easily stackable, right? Like 1 ounces, so you can put them
Yep.
into tubes or easily to store and travel with. As far as gold, I have a question for y'all. I've lately started to recommend to my audience to think about not just like fractional gold, fractional eagles would probably be like if I was going to buy one, that would be the one, fractional
Sure.
eagles. But I also feel comfortable with Maple Leafs. I also feel comfortable with the fractional Britannias, right? Any of those, I would feel perfectly comfortable with buying or accepting. But I've been starting to recommend to my audience thinking about a little bit of gold jewelry as well. And the reason for that is it's looked at differently when you go through customs.
for
Okay.
sure.
Hmm.
So let's say worst case scenario, you're getting out of Dodge. You're going to Canada, or you're going to your cousin who lives in England, or you're going to Amsterdam to have a party, or whatever. You're just
Yep.
disappearing, right? And you're gonna be gone for a while. Um, when you go through customs, and if you're traveling with 30 gold coins, you're gonna get stopped.
They're
Mhm.
gonna look
They're
at
gonna
you.
have questions. They're
Yep.
gonna have questions. But if you travel with a couple gold chains and a couple gold bracelets and a couple gold rings, that's just part of your culture, and that's not really looked at the same. And it's a little bit more likely to draw, like somebody might be like, man, that guy's got some money or something, right?
Yep.
But you're not going to get that same kind of level of where's this guy going with
Right.
30 ounces of gold in his pocket. This
Right.
is weird,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't disagree. Regarding the coins, I think currently I like Brits the most. I think that their security features are unparalleled with regard to common
Sure.
bullion. I do like maples and eagles as well. Buffaloes are also beautiful, but I think the Brits are security wise is where it's at. With regard to jewelry, it's funny you mentioned that. I made my wife I think it's about 1 ounce, 24 karat pendant. It's a
Nice.
solid nugget. It's gorgeous too. But yeah, she could put that on, and you wouldn't look twice at it. You're like, okay, yeah, she's got
Yeah.
some
Right.
nice jewelry. That's it.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, if push came to shove and she needed to offload it to whatever, buy a plane ticket or to get us on a boat to get out of Dodge, yeah, you could do that because it's solid, it's real, 24 karat, it's pure, and
Jewelry
it's
store can test it, and they'll be like, "Yep,
exactly
that's gold. I'll buy it from you." Yep.
it's quite
Yeah, and that's just one
incognito.
thing that I wanted to touch on was people buying it. They just have to be careful and they know what they're buying between the carats: 14 karat, 10 karat, 18 karat,
Mhm.
22 karat. It goes on. They just don't want to get into it too heavy. They paid an amount for a 14 karat chain when they thought it was 24 karat
Right.
or 22 karat or 18 karat. Now you're dealing with something that isn't worth what you paid anymore.
Right. And the premiums are going to be higher on jewelry for sure. You know, because it's
But you
because
can
of
find
art.
some really good deals on jewelry too. I mean, there's stuff out there that's
They go to
it could have
scrap. Yeah.
it could be a broken clasp, and somebody's just trying to make a few extra bucks on top of what the scrapper's going to give them. So you might get it really, really close to a spot deal there.
It's a good point.
So,
Yep, good stuff.
well, this is good, man. I really appreciate you being on the show tonight. I think we learned a lot, and I
Oh,
think
for sure.
Yeah,
hopefully our
my
viewers
pleasure,
can say the
guys.
same.
Anytime you guys want to hang out and talk coins or prepping or state of the world, I'm down. You let me know.
We do.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Definitely. This was fun. It was a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
all right, Paulie, you think that that button's gonna work?
Let's find out. All right, folks, we'll see you all on the next one. Let's see if